check it out for yourself. Follow me.
What is going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. I know we're kind of running a few minutes behind, but hey, it wouldn't be me if I didn't run at least a couple minutes there. So I hope everybody's having a good week so far. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I'm doing pretty good. I started a new job that has definitely been very all-consuming over the last few weeks. So much so I'll be in Cleveland, Ohio next week. So if anybody's up in the Cleveland area and wants to meet up and chat, I would love it. Definitely get in there. What's up? How you doing, Kyle? So, but I do want to kind of harken back to a few things. And I made mention of this when I put up the event page, is that when I started this show, and we'll go with a fun beard fact for this. But when I started this show, the idea is that I wanted to get involved and talk with a little bit of everybody and really kind of expand and tell people stories and help bring the community more and more together. And it was definitely a challenge. It was definitely a world that I wasn't comfortable with right off the bat, but the community has been there for me. And I wanted to give something back to the community and help expand it and bring it, a little bit closer together. So with that being said, the guy that I've got coming on tonight, and Yukon, sorry, it's been a bad week. I do want to say a big shout out to Yukon. I got your thank you letter today from MobFest 6. Greatly appreciated. Love that. They raised $8,500 for their charity. It was a great deal back in March, and I can't wait to see what you guys do in the future. So mad love to you guys. Very much appreciated. And Yukon, if you ever need to talk, brother, just reach out. But to go back, the gentleman that I've got on tonight, we have been talking about this. I want to say it's about 6 months, and I'm gonna let him kind of verify. But he is another showrunner. He's got his own podcast. It's called the Heart of a Villian Podcast, and I actually connected with him through the episode I did with Jeremiah Duncan. Here is his logo, and it's talk about the villains and what they've got going on, among other things. But I'm just going to go ahead and bring him on. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to BP, also known as Brian Phillips. I'm sure some of you guys already know him. What's up, brother?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Man, you know what? It's been a crazy fucking week.
It has been here too. Yeah. It seems like it's cyclical, right? It goes in you have a really slow week or really easy week, and then everything just piles. And what do you do?
And I've been calling this the summer of change. And we can dive into that as we go. Because for me, it's been a very rough few months, club wise. We closed Mad Viking Kentucky chapter at the beginning of June, and so everything kind of just was in kind of flux, and then turn around and come into the new job and everything else. Yes, very much so, Scott Sakura. I changed my underwear. I do that quite frequently. At least 3 times a week. Just saying.
Well, you flip it over, you get 2 days out of it.
BP understands.
Yeah. Unless you have a really messy day, then you just can't.
BP has a lot of those. But BP is also a wonderful man that gets to quote unquote stay at home when he can. when he's not running around like a madman, or looking around like a madman, for this matter.
Sorry, I'm having difficulty opening something while I'm talking to you here. I don't know why. I normally don't, but anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
But no, we've been calling this the summer of change, because it seems like everything is just kind of went a different route over the last several months, and it's not been bad. I know there's a lot of growing pains, a lot of changes going on that are not great for some people. But for me, it's been fairly positive. I took a new position that's going to be a lot more beneficial financially for me and my family. My wife took a new position with her job that is going to be eventually going to be more beneficial financially, but it's beneficial for her mental health and for a kind of a movement into the right direction. So it's a win regardless.
You can't beat the mental health part of it.
No, you really can't.
That's the most important part.
And Scott, you're right. He has a beautiful setup. I was actually bragging on it a little bit before we went live. And I'm sure you're familiar with Scott Sikora. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I've tuned in to watch those guys many times.
Talking Beards is definitely one of the shows that really got me on board with doing this. And if it wasn't for Scott and Aaron, I don't know if I'd be as far along as I am. So, but man, we've been talking about this for what, 6 months almost?
At least, I want to say, yeah, on and off. We had that first conversation where we were just like jazzed about it and super stoked about the idea and the prospect of it, and then
couldn't get the timing.
It goes back to what you just said about this week. It just, life happens, and then there was a time period where I was like, oh, what? Well, first of all, are you cuss-worthy on here?
Like, don't you dare fucking cuss on my show.
Okay. Always ask. And what I was preparing in the background while I was trying to get open was this bottle here. I got always do a little drinky poo while I'm doing the show. But it's funny because life happens, and there was a time period where I know that when I reached back out to you kind of after a couple months, and I was like, did we somehow get disconnected on Facebook? Because I got to a point where I had stopped seeing some of your posts, and I had to actually search for your show to find stuff again. And I was like, what's
funny is I had to search for you.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, because I remember like what was really funny about it for me was like, I was just thinking about you like a few days before. I was like, man, I really need to reach back out to BP, see how things are going. And then you hit me up, and I was like, holy shit. I was like, I couldn't, because I kept thinking, I was like, is he still on my Facebook? Because I hadn't seen shit from you in months. And so I'm glad, though, that you reached back out and we were able to finally put this into motion. And the reason why it's been so hard for us is because we run on the same night. And we're about an hour off from each other. So it makes it a little complicated to get the timing right.
Yeah.
I was like, I want you to do my show. And then you were like, I want you to do mine too. And I was like, fuck it. Let's just do it all at the same night.
Yeah, do it all the same. And so what's funny is that we up until we had this plan of attack that we were going to go with. And then it wasn't even until 2 nights ago that we realized, wait a minute, I thought we were back to back, 1 hour than the other hour.
Right.
And come to find out, no, because you're Eastern time, I'm Central time, and everything else. It was like, oh, there's actually an hour in between when you usually do your show and I do mine. But we wanted to go just back to back. So I'm going to be an hour early for my show time next hour. So what he's probably trying to, what we're getting to here is that after this show, we're going to be hopping over to my show directly over there to the Heart of a Villain over on YouTube. I'm right now only on YouTube. I stopped doing the simulcast with Facebook and a few other places just because it seemed like it was more of a hassle at the time. And people weren't really, what was funny was people had more difficulty finding the show when it was on multiple locations rather than just one. I don't know why that is, but it just made it easier. So
I will say that most of mine comes out of Facebook. I do get some YouTube. Luckily, thank goodness for the Talking Beards. Because I run on both my channel on YouTube and their channel as well as their Facebook, and so I get some float over from their channel.
Gotcha,
which is really nice. But hey, Miss Leslie Phillips from North Florida Facial Hair Society.
Hello.
She's a wonderful photographer. If you ever need her for an event,
well, she's got a great last name.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, I mean, you might be related. I'm not sure, but.
Probably not. There's a lot of us out there, but
So let's jump in, man. Let's jump into your history, because like I know that you've got a very interesting story and very detailed journey in what you did in your career and then finding into the bearding community. So let's start from the beginning. Let's hear what you got.
yeah. So my story is actually, it's probably not all too unique from people that, find the bearding community later in life. And for me, it was, I went to college, and right out of college, I knew what I wanted to do. And I went into law enforcement, and I was a cop for just over 20 years. And I did all this stuff that you do, worked my way up through the ranks. And for a while I was a evidence tech, crime scene guy, the CSI thing. I did that for about 5 years. I was ended up as a shift sergeant. I spent some time in my thinner years, the first few years on the department, doing bike patrol and doing a little bit of that. I was on the SWAT team for about 10 years. I was a firearms instructor for most of my career. I was a SWAT sniper for the SWAT team. And so I was heavily involved in instruction and firearms and whatnot. And funny side story. To my knowledge, I don't know if it's ever been done since on my department, but I set the record for the very first person to ever get a DUI on a bicycle. I was on bike patrol riding around a park one day, and this idiot almost clipped me on the bike when I was riding around. And what was funny is that I blew my whistle. I didn't have little sirens or any fancy lights on the bike at all, and it was right at dusk. And so I didn't know. I whipped around on him because I was so pissed he almost hit me, and I'm blowing the whistle as you do, and he pulled over, and I couldn't believe it. He actually, the guy didn't have, he actually pulled over. And so I actually got off the bike. I walked up and I was like, I can't believe you pulled over.
All I can picture now is like, I'm in hot pursuit. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. I didn't have there was no bike. There's no bike bell.
See, that's a missed opportunity.
Yeah. There was a couple little flashy. There's a little flashy light on the front, but that's more or less just for attention getting in certain circumstances. But and I wasn't gonna I wouldn't have probably done anything about it. But he was so sloppy drunk, he couldn't even get his ID out of his wallet. It was kind of a funny thing. But so after 20 years doing that. And for the majority of the time when I was in the detective bureau, we were allowed to have a goatee or a beard, a mustache. Our department frowned on and did not allow full-on facial hair of like beards. And they didn't even allow the guys in uniform to have anything more than a mustache. You only had a mustache. You couldn't even wear a goatee. It was too intimidating. And so I always said, because you spend that much time having to shave all the time. And so when I went back the road for my last couple of years to be a shift sergeant, I was like, never again. Once I get done, once I do leave, I'm not shaving. And I said, and that actually started, I stopped shaving like 4 days before my last day of work. So I was kind of scruffy on my last day and didn't care, and never looked back. So that was 2017. I've had a beard ever since then. And what it was, I wasn't interested. I didn't really know that beard and facial hair clubs existed. You see every once in a while, you see on TV where they mention the national or the world championships of, this, and you just kind of look at that and you're like, and they never show the regular dudes. They always show the people with the really long beards or with the ones where they do some sort of weird,
the freestyle
version. Yeah. The regular Joes don't usually make the TV, so which is unfortunate. But that was as far as facial hair clubs or anything like that I'd recognized. And so what I did was I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it was on Facebook one day or because I didn't even have Instagram at the time, and I just came across this feed about, and maybe it was because I was looking for some beard care products or something, and I saw this thing, something about bearded villains. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And I did some research on what they were about as a club. And the thing for me that really rang a chord for me that struck home for what I wanted was when you leave, and I've heard this from several guys, when you leave the military or you leave service, some service capacity, firefighting, law enforcement, anything like that, there's a kind of a tight-knit brotherhood that you have. And when you leave that, you're kind of on the outs, really. You just kind of, you leave that life behind, and that close bond of stuff that you had, you realize pretty quickly it's fleeting. And
it really is.
I'm missing that. And so to learn that this club was a at least they explained themselves as a brotherhood first and foremost of the bearded men. And I started looking into it a little further, and then I was like, you know what, I'll just meet with some of these guys and see what it's all about. And at the time, Indiana only had one Bearded Villain chapter, and I live up in northern Indiana, about 5 minutes south of Michigan. So I'm way up here in the northern part of the state. And the only chapter was in central Indiana in Indianapolis. So
that was military, wasn't it? That's the military guy.
Well, there's a couple. Yeah. There was a couple. At the time, the guy's name that was the captain of the chapter was Josh.
Right. Okay.
And I'm trying to read your comments here. I've got that on my screen over here to the side.
I have to go back to this one just because Leslie made me laugh with this. Is put your hands in the baskets.
Yes,
like
I love that.
DUI basket.
DUI, yeah.
Joe just chimed in. My type of podcast. Joe is a former corrections officer and whatnot, so he's definitely good. And
yeah,
his wife Erica.
Yeah,
good friends of mine.
Good deal. So yeah, I just the first time I met up, I drove my family still lives. I still have a lot of family that lives in the Indianapolis area, and so driving down there was nothing. It's like a 10-minute drive for me, but it's 2.5 hours, but it seems like 10 minutes. And just after going down there and hanging out with the guys from the Bearded Villains Indiana chapter the first time, I was like welcomed in with open arms. And the funniest thing was one of the guys I talked to most, we started talking within about 5 minutes. He's like, what's your background? What you do? And he just like, we're going to talk. We need to talk more. And I'm like, what? He's like, I spent a good portion of my life in prison. And I'm like, cool. Because one of the things that, and this is, I don't know if everybody feels this way, but this is one of the things I always, and this may be going on some crazy tangent that you don't want to hear about, but
hit it.
I always approached that job realizing that not everybody's bad. There's evil in the world for sure, but there's a lot of good people out there that just make bad decisions. And there are people in that line of work that don't recognize that, or it takes them far too long to recognize that. And so it becomes a very personal thing for them when they're arresting somebody for something or they're ticketing somebody for something. It's, it's almost like an offense to them that you're doing whatever it is you're doing. And people are imperfect. And, I learned that early on that there's good people out there that just make bad decisions. And
absolutely.
It doesn't make them a bad person. And I've told that to people, when they're, in distress and upset over what it was that they've done. And you're going to be arresting them, but hey, keep your head up. This is one night, one bad decision, whatever. And so to me, I was actually looking forward to when I retired, the weird thing about, and I don't know if it's so much that way with military guys, because they have to incorporate, and I've spoken to a few, and it is for some and it isn't for others, but your military guys, you're such a close-knit group when you're serving in a live action scenario and overseas or something like that, in a wartime scenario. But the guy, for the groups that aren't actively serving, that you just see occasionally, or if you're not full time, I've heard guys say that, you just kind of, it's, them, but you don't always feel real close to them.
Right.
But it's when you serve, overseas, and you're in wartime scenario, life and death stuff, that those bonds are formed. And when I left the police department, it was interesting to me because I didn't have many friends at all outside of the department, many adult friends at all. And so it was a very eye-opening and weird transition for me to recognize that here's all these men out here, and it doesn't matter what kind of screwed up life they may have had once before or what they, but they're out here doing good for people. They've got a good head on their shoulders. They got good, they may make occasional issues and problems, but it's just really cool to see men succeeding in life. And
Absolutely.
that to me was fun. It was really neat to recognize that it's okay to be friends with these people out here in this world that don't have that background.
Yeah, I think that's something that, and I know me and you've talked about this on the phone, in our many times just random conversations about how people tend to put a lot of emphasis on, titles and groups, like, and cliques. Like, so like your former police, they wouldn't expect you to hang out with somebody that's done prison time or something like that. Or like military folk tend to, sometimes gather with military folk. And in this community, in the beard community, it's kind of a hodgepodge. It's a mix and match. Like, you're talking about like one of the first people you really got to talk to down there. He was like, and once he found out your background, he's like, I want to talk to you. I was in prison for a long time. And it's like, that's just one of those things. Like, you don't think about it until, like you're in that situation to where it's like, there's a lot of diversity in this community. And some of it, and for the most part, as long as the people that you're dealing with are, there for the right reasons, like it's always positive.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what walk of life you come from. We're all here for the same thing.
Yeah. It's that old adage. It doesn't matter how you get there, that you get there.
Exactly.
And everybody's path is different and unique to themselves. And, you are not the person you are today. I'm not the person I am today, if not for all of your individual life experiences.
Exactly.
And so the person that I meet today for the first time, the person that, you come across and you're meeting, you go to a brand new event that you've never been to before. You're meeting all of these other people for the first time, and you have nothing to base any opinion on whatsoever, except for them in that moment. And it's a really cool thing to spend some time and talk to people and recognize and see the differences that we have, but to see the similarities, and we just got there in different ways.
Right.
And that's one of my favorite things, one of my favorite interactions in talking with people in the bearding community from all over the world. And it's just been a really cool thing.
So diving into that part. So like you said, you started off with because at that time there was only one Bearded Villains chapter, and then it just kind of expanded. So you've been a part of them since 2017. And like, what's been like, obviously you guys have split off to where there's 2 chapters in the state now. What was one of the first things that you really recognized as the group, when you were joining?
Well, there's actually 3 now.
There is 3.
Yeah.
Okay,
while we were still the one chapter, the Southern Indiana chapter branched off in 2018. And then those of us up north, we actually had a large group of guys up here, numbering somewhere between 10 and 15, that were still part of BVIN at the time. Well, it was about 9, I think, but we had about half the chapter actually lived up here in the northern part of the state. And so I had a conversation with the then captain, Joe, and he's just like, for you guys to drive 2.5 hours to stuff, it just makes sense. If you guys we would support you if you wanted to create your own chapter up there. And so we looked at it. I had a conversation with those guys and with the rest of our guys and said, is this something we want to explore? And so we moved forward with it. And so we were chartered in 2020 as their Northern Indiana chapter. But for me, it was, and I laugh at this because it feels like I'm quoting somebody that I filmed recently for an interview, but I have that thing within me where you as he says, you get off, for lack of a better term, on helping other people.
Yeah.
And I've always been that guy that if my day isn't made until I know that I've at least put a smile on somebody's face, made somebody laugh, helped them in some way that was unexpected. So I look for those types of things throughout the day. And Bearded Villains, as I found it, showed me that there was not only this cool brotherhood of guys that you have a close-knit group with, but that you can actually take it a step further and do some really cool stuff to help other people out. And there's no shortage of people that are in need, and there's no shortage of ways that we can learn from each other and other groups to find out, oh, you know what, they're doing this kind of thing. Maybe we can try that over here. And that's, to me, that's such a really cool process. And so what happened for me early on when I was, and I know this kind of goes back to a question you asked earlier about me and the show that I have. The way that it came about was in 2018, I was asking the then captain of the Bearded Villains Indiana chapter, hey, I'm being told now, we have, at the time, it was like between 150, 160 chapters worldwide. And there were, at the last census that they had done at that point, there were somewhere between 4,000 and 4,600 villains worldwide, I think it was. And I would hear these stories, and one of the things that we have to do is, get an Instagram page, and you start to do that process and share pictures and events and different things you do. And I'd see these guys from all over the world doing things. And then we have, of course, we use the app Line Chat for chats that we do. But outside of directly reaching out to somebody or directly reaching out on Instagram, you didn't know anything about these guys. And this was a worldwide brotherhood. And so I said, has anybody ever thought of doing a podcast? And so that, you can share what all these other guys are doing and talk to them. And I was told, I think some people tried that, but it only lasted like a couple episodes. Nobody really wanted to listen to it. And so I was like, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. And I didn't even tell the wife I was going to do it. I just started buying stuff.
She's like, what the hell is this, Bill?
Yeah. So it was one of those things over the first couple of years. It was like, between 2018 and late 2019, new gear just started showing up down here in the studio in my basement. And she's like, when did you get that? Oh, I've had that. You didn't know I had that? I've had that for a while now. But it's been so fun because now with this episode tonight, when I have you on in a little bit, it'll be episode 187 for me. And I've been going since 28, I think it's 2018. It's at first it was about every 2 or 3 weeks I would do an episode. And then somewhere around episode 20, I started doing weekly. And then episode 25, I started doing live streams in addition to the podcast. So, but that's one of those cool things that I've been able to talk to guys literally from all over the world. I've interviewed now brothers from, I want to say it's like 22 countries now. And well over 150 guys from around the world.
And if you guys haven't checked out his show, I would definitely recommend it. Heart of a Villain podcast. I'm a subscriber on Apple Podcast. And
thank you.
You're welcome. I get the updates whenever you send out a new episode. So I try to listen in because like you tell some good stories. You get a lot of cool guests on there from the villains community that I wouldn't talk to on a normal basis because I'm not they're not in my area, or I don't have as deep of a connection to the villains. My connection to the villains is a little bit limited. I like the three people in my phone contact list that are villains are yourself, Jeremiah Duncan, and Ray Stovall from Slugger City.
Right.
And I love each and every one of you, but I don't have a lot of contact with a lot of villains, and it's just because, and this is actually going to segue into what I wanted to talk about. What we've been talking about is a lot of the community doesn't have doesn't have a lot of talk with the villain side of the community. And this goes back to kind of how my story is like, when I first got in to the community, I didn't really know anything about the charity side until after I was already joining a club and then get into the competitions. And that's where I got my first look at the villains. Was they're like, oh, well, you go to these competitions, and I was like, oh, who are those guys? Oh, those are the bearded villains. It's like, cool, let's talk to them. Oh, they kind of just stick to themselves. And I heard that for years.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, the villains are doing something. But if you go, you're not gonna win. It's for the villain. The comps that you go to are for the villains, or, that the villains host and all this other stuff. And so like there's a negative connotation with the rest of the community typically that's tied. Mainly here. I'm not gonna say it's everywhere. But like around here, it's, and I hate using the word negative but that's kind of where.
No, I think you're right. I think that's that. I mean, it's not a good word. Negative's not a good word, but it's accurate. In this case, I think it's accurate. And honestly, I don't think that it's limited to your area. I think it is, there's pockets where you hear it from guys all around the country.
Well, like
here in the States.
I went to Texas. Me and my wife drove to Texas for You Matter, since he's already on here. Shannon Klinkenbeard, world champion there, whaler.
That beard is amazing.
It's the envy of all whalers.
Yeah,
that is the pinnacle.
That's the whaler that everybody strives for.
Exactly.
And nobody can attain.
But he runs a competition in LaGrange, Texas every year called You Matter. And they have this is the second year that they did it. And me and my wife drove down a 16-hour drive. It was a lot of fun for that drive, but it was worth it. But we went down there, and day of the competition, I was kind of walking around through the building, and I ran across a bunch of the Texas villains, and they, without hesitation, like I don't remember what his name is now, but I was wearing the same Boston Scully hat that he was.
Okay.
I think he was one of the captains down there, and he walked up and he's like, I like your taste in hats. And we struck up a conversation, and then I talked to him periodically throughout the rest of the day, just cutting up bullshitting. But like, I didn't get that a lot from other places that I've visited.
Yeah.
So, and so that was kind of where I was getting at is, and like I said, coming up in this community, and it just felt like there was always kind of like a divide between it. And one of the things that I talked about as an ambition when I started this show is like, I want to bridge that gap, not only between like the mainstream and the community, but also like between one side of the community to the other, and bring it together, because we're all doing the same thing.
Right.
We just do it with different circles.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And I think right now, and we can get into the whole state of the community, that because I know that you've had some thoughts to that as well, is I think right now it's more important than ever that we start building those bridges, start bridging the gaps, and coming together and doing more, because all we're doing is, people like to use the term divide and conquer, but with unity there is strength.
Oh, 100%.
And combining the two sides of the community into one giant. Yes, as Shannon just said, the villains at You Matter are awesome people. They're wonderful people. Like, that's one of the things I look forward to when I go to You Matter 3 in January in 2024, is to get to hang out with them more. Mm-hmm. They're a group of people I want to get to know more. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot on the table that can be worked on. Bringing the community, for Indiana, for example, taking the 3 chapters in Indiana for the Villains and working with Beard Mob Indiana or the Hoosier Beard Alliance and doing more it is just gonna be the betterment for the community and the state altogether.
Yeah, it's it's a really, really, I mean, it's one of those things that it feels like it could be a touchy subject, I think.
And it is, and we are diving into some taboo topic tonight.
Well, but you know what? I'm all about that. Let's do it. You know,
and no, Jacob, that is not the Kringle. That was the first thing I asked him as soon as I got on.
You know, you asked me that. I don't think it is. Let me see what brand this is. It's some off brand. Just a sec.
But I thought it was
the bald head.
Man, it's blinding. Oof.
It says the Hat Depot.
The Hat Depot. It's a nice looking hat, though.
Yeah, it's get my ears back on here. No, it's one of the guys down in the South turned me on to these hats, and he actually gave me one of his personal hats, and I was like, oh man, because I've been wearing the flat caps for a long time. Baseball caps are all great, but I for bigger guys like me, the flat caps, I would much rather have them. And I can't afford to buy more than a couple of 2 or 3 of the Boston Scully caps. Those things are just pricey.
You know what? That you're gonna thank you for the segue, because guess what, man? I got something for you. You can use the code Bearded Rogue and get 15% off on the Boston Scully website. Just saying.
Well, I've got 15% off codes. It's just still.
Yeah.
I can, when I go to Amazon, I can buy 3 of these for the price of 1.
Sure. But I got the Bruin on tonight.
But there's a huge difference in quality too. The Scully hat. I mean, the first time I got one of those, I was like, wow, I see why people love them.
Yeah, there is a massive difference. And I've got 14 of these.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah. I was that way with the Dixon short sleeve shirts for a while, and I just kept buying those. And I don't like long sleeve shirts, but the Dixon short sleeves. And they would just keep showing up at the house, and the wife's like, what are you doing?
Those are the bamboos, I think.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so these are the topics that sometimes we need to talk about, no matter how uncomfortable they are. And for me, when we started the Northern Indiana chapter, I said, myself and our co-captain, that's my number 2. He's actually probably more of a number 1. But when we were talking about what we kind of wanted to see for the future of our chapter, was that we wanted to focus heavily on service to the communities within our area. We're the whole northern part of the state, it spans about 3 hours wide by about an hour and a half north to south. So we've got guys that live 2.5 hours apart, 3 hours apart. But because it's weird because of the way the roads are configured, it's just out of the way for some of our guys. But we wanted to do that big time is focus heavily on some charity stuff. But we also wanted to kind of drive home the fact that we need to repair, I guess would be a good word, repair, or even just create relationships with men from other beard clubs.
Right.
Because as you said, we are in it for a similar thing. Now there are differences, obviously, club to club to club. And when we first started nailing down the tenets of this show, what we're going to do this week, I've been doing a lot of brainstorming, trying to figure out what can you put your finger on? Are there things that you can put your finger on that kind of are reasons, aside from saying, well, that guy's just an asshole, which, okay, that's the case for some people. But the more and more I thought about it, here's kind of what I've come up with. And this, I don't know if this makes sense to a lot of people. I don't know. And this is just based off of my interactions with a whole bunch of guys that are in other beard clubs. And then obviously my experience within the Villains. And that is that the Bearded Villains have, as long as I've been a part of it, have focused very heavily on brotherhood.
Right.
And for some guys, the charity thing is the smallest piece,
Right.
but they want that tight bond. They want to be able to, they want a bunch of guys that they can go, and we see each other 5 days a week in big groups. Some chapters are like that. And it's a huge bond, and that's what they have. And you know that you have that availability to have that bond with guys all over the world just by the fact that you're a villain. And you can go across the globe. I went over earlier this year to England, and you know, a whole room full of people I'd never met welcomed me with open arms, and not one person was like, "Who's that? Why don't we?" You know, they knew I was coming, and you know, they welcome you. And that's one of the things that I think is unique to the Villains, because it's not just a social club, because it's looked at as a brotherhood. And I know there are other clubs that do treat themselves, they do hold themselves and carry themselves that way as well. But there are a bunch of individual beard and mustache clubs out there that it's just a social club. They do charity stuff when they get together, but they don't get together quite as often.
Right.
And they don't, you know, they just don't get as close together. And so I think that's one reason why some of the Villains, and I don't think it's an excuse by any means, but I think that's one of the reasons why you see Villains kind of hunker down when they go out in public to other events, that they stay tight knit. We tell our guys, if you're at an event, you start talking to everybody else outside. You don't hang out with your chapter. We go to an event, you're going to talk to everybody. You go out and introduce yourself, and you start talking to people. But that's one of the reasons, I think. And then the other big one for me that I think is, and this is, I think, unique to the other clubs. And I think this is one thing where the Villains are kind of pigeonholed a little bit. And that is that there's only so many weekends in a year. There's only so many days in a month, all that stuff. And so you have to pick and choose where you can go to go support other clubs. And as you know, that's a big thing within the bearding community. You want to go support all the other clubs out there and their endeavors, and go to their events. And I think one of the reasons, and this is not something that anybody's told me. This just seems like it makes sense to me as a reason. But there are so many Villains out there as one club. There's so many chapters, especially here in the States, that every month there's 5 or 6 chapters doing something. And so you have to be careful where you want to go support.
Right.
And so because the Villains are so big as a club, and there's so many different events constantly going on, I think you see Villains more often take the choice to go support a Villain event when they're limited on how many events they might go to in a month, rather than going to an event that they don't want to step out the box. They don't want to meet. They'd rather go see their brothers, not meet other people. And they want to go support this event. And, you know, you get in your groove where there's like the You Matters one for you is a big one that you're going to probably always go to as long as you can.
Yeah.
And so there's other events within Bearded Villains that everybody says, that's an annual event for me. I'm going to that. I'm going to that. And so you may have 5 or 6 of those. And then you may only have 1 or 2 other weekends that you can go to something, and you choose, well, I've never been to this Bearded Villain event, so I'm going to go over here to this. But what happens is you forget about all the somewhat local events that other bearded mustache clubs are doing that you could just take a day trip to.
Right.
And that's the kind of thing that I want people to think about, is that it might be what you deem as a little bit of an inconvenience, but what it could do for the community to see this other group of guys that is kind of stepping out of what they normally do and going to support other people doing it. I think much in the same way that we, the Bearded Villains, go out and support all the other chapters that we support within the States or other countries. It's just like many of the other bearded mustache clubs that are out there that might be individual, that might be regional, but they're supporting other groups and other events within the bearded mustache community, the bearding community, that they may not be in their same club, but they're still doing it because it's like it's almost like if you look at the bearded villains here, and then you have this one cloud that's all the bearded villains, and then you have this other cloud that's everybody else.
Right.
And that's where everybody's, they're going to support all the people over here. And that may involve supporting 10 different clubs. Whereas the villain guys are more likely to just say, I want to support all the villains, which we want to get out of.
Well, and I mean, I see, like, when you explain it like that, it makes sense. I get where you're coming from with that, because it is a brotherhood. It is almost like the way I explain it, because I come from fraternal orders and whatnot. I look at it as the villains kind of come off as a fraternal order. Like, it is men only, inside the villains chapters. And then, of course, you have the women's, but kind of like an auxiliary. I know that's kind of been an offshoot over the last couple of years. The villainettes, I know, are technically not directly tied to the villains. But like, so that's the way I look at it. And so that's kind of the way I always took that. And I get it because I was an odd fellow for a long time. So I understand that experience. But the biggest thing for me is just wanting to show the other side, like the community, we're all inclusive in the community. We don't care where you come from, what walk of life, male, female, as long as you're out here doing good shit. That's been the motto of the summer for me, has been, let's just do good shit.
Yeah.
I don't give a damn where you come from. Let's just have some fun and do good things. And so I'm hoping that we need to let partials and mustaches in BV.
Well, I have no say in that.
Wait. Now that's going to bring it. So you can't have partials or just mustaches in BV.
No, it's bearded villains specifies it has to be a full beard. Now, what has transpired over the last, I think, as a conversation, when I first came in, it was explained to me that full beard meant that you had to have a full beard, including a mustache. Over the years, it's kind of been explained away, and it's kind of been, I don't want to say relaxed, because I don't know if it was official. It was just explained to me that way. But there have been whalers within bearded villains for years.
Right.
So I think because it's still considered a full beard connected from ear to ear. So like chops, they don't count. Mustache doesn't count because it's only a mustache. So there's some mustaches out there, man. I mean, you've seen them and you've been around them, and I've seen some that just impress the hell out of me. That take, I mean, you got guys that are in bearded villains that just roll out of bed and hardly ever comb their damn beard. And they don't care. They're just, that's what they got to have to be in the club, and that's great. But it never ceases to amaze me to see how impressive some of the other beard categories that are not, allowed within bearded villains, the effort and I mean, it's just amazing. It really is, and it's impressive as hell. But it's
putting my mustache up more when I do the show.
Yeah. What's funny is I used to be able to, I don't know what's happened over the last 4 years, but I used to be able to grow out my sides.
Man.
I don't know what it is, but they don't even grow anymore. The sides don't, past where they're at. So I'm not sure, but yeah, it is a weird thing. Where we do allow the whalers, but it has to be full beard. And yeah, that's just one of the requirements because of the name bearded villains. They don't consider it a beard if it's not ear to ear, fully connected. So I mean, they have that, and that was I'm guessing that was when it went from being just a Instagram page and a clothing line into going into the club. That was one of the tenets that got put down. Yeah, I've heard the origin story. And I would love to get Von Knox on here at some point. Good luck.
Yeah, I know.
I don't mean that. I don't mean that because he wouldn't. I mean that because I have trouble getting a hold of him.
I've heard about him being a recluse. So
he goes in spurts, and there's times. I mean, I've got his cell phone number on my phone that I just text. I send him message after message after message, and I go 3 months sometimes without a response.
It's Mike Arone from Boston Scully. I got his message. I got his phone number and I text with him, and I may send him 10 text messages and I might get a response back, like a 1-sentence response back a month later.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Yep. I know. I mean, it is. I mean, it's, if they've got several hundred phone numbers in their, in their phone, and they're constantly being hounded for things, and
I'm sure. So I do want to kind of because I know we're going to have to jump onto your show almost immediately after this. There is a few last minute things I kind of want to wrap up. And I know you said we didn't have to talk about it, but I want to show your trailer since we've been talking about the heart of a villain.
Okay.
If you'd be down for that.
I don't care. Yeah. I've seen it 100 times, but go for it. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it quite a few times myself, but it's still really good. And this will actually open up the group a little bit more on our side to see some of the work. So for the ones that don't know, is BP actually has been you've been doing it over the last year.
Actually, it's been longer than that now. It's been a process. I started doing my initial interviews for the film back in 2019, believe it or not. And then COVID paused everything. And but yeah, I'm doing a documentary film about the bearded villains. But the tagline for the film is every villain has a story. And it talks about, interview different guys from around the world and their reasons why they chose bearded villains, how it's changed their lives. And it's been truly a rewarding experience for me to do it, to see this.
And I think you guys need to see this as well. And so I wanted to share this out because I actually know a few of the people.
Are you sick of having issues with your doctors?
Love those ads. Hey, there's an ad on there.
Hey,
I'm not getting paid for that.
I know. Heartless.
I just want to do something more with the life that I've been given. Time is the most valuable thing we have. How do you spend your time? That's really what people should really understand. How are you spending the most valuable commodity that you have? What are you doing with it? Are you just sleeping 12, 15 hours a day and get up? Or are you going out and changing people's lives? Are you going out and making your life a better place and creating memories?
We are social creatures by nature. I think everybody has different levels of comfort with that, but I think generally we want to be a part of something. That, to me, when you get to be a part of that and you recognize that your small contribution did something on a much bigger level than beyond you, and even beyond a handful of you, but more than that, like people all came together. I think that's something that people really crave, and I think if that's what you want, that's what you're after. That's the specific level for you.
This brotherhood has helped me in many different ways. And it's I think it's the support. It's inspiring.
Joining this opens up a whole realm. You know what I'm saying? It's like the big mixing pot. And that's what really opened my eyes to a lot of stuff that, outside of my neighborhood, outside of how I grew up, there are guys out there who are kind of like me. We're not all the same shades, but there are guys out there like me, straight up, stand-up dudes.
The Bearded Villains have definitely helped me come out of my shell as far as being very much an introvert, almost a hermit.
I feel at home. There's just not a better feeling than that, to have all these guys that you just chop it up here and there, embrace you like they've known you all your life. It's like we were meant to be.
Deep down inside, everybody is going through something.
I knew being, as introverted and like shut in as I was, it was affecting my life. And it took something like this brotherhood to help get me out of it.
BV does that for a lot of people. Sometimes you end up on the other side of what you used to do. Sometimes you end up on the other side of how you used to live, how you used to be.
I think what it does is it makes you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself.
Originally spring of 2023.
Honestly, like me personally, when I watched it, I love what you did. And I know we've talked about this several times, off air and stuff. And, how I want to do something similar for the entire community, villains included. And it's one of the first things I said to you was like, I don't want to steal what you're doing. I just want to do something similar on a larger scale.
Yeah.
When it comes to the entire community. But you've inspired me, and I love the trailer. I love what you did there. And yes, it's really cool. And I'm definitely ready for the full doc to hit the airwaves. So any updates to that before we start wrapping out?
Yeah. Updates. It's funny. I was trying to figure out a way that there's a way I can do this, but I can't for some reason. I disconnected it and now it's not connecting.
Uh-oh.
I was going to try and bring up my, show you my setup here. Cause it's become basically a podcast studio, live stream studio, but also, an editing studio for the film. So I've got like 2 monitors right in front of me here, and then the big monitor right in front of me up here, and soundboard and all this other stuff. But this, it's the thing that actually surprised me about it, is doing it yourself, 100% myself. So I've been doing all the filming. I've traveled literally around the world, different places to film interviews. And now I'm in the editing phase. I've got a couple of little touch-up things that I have to film. Originally, I wanted to film out and completed by this past spring, but unfortunately, due to schedule changes of people and things like that, I couldn't get some key people interviewed. And so now, basically, my days are here in the studio editing. And I've got about, I always envisioned this thing to be about 40 to 60 minutes, kind of in that area, but closer, hopefully, to about 40 to 45. And I'm at about, I've got everything edited together, not color graded yet, but I've got everything edited together up to about 36 minutes right now. And so over the next couple of weeks, I'll have a tight 40 to 45 minutes in there. And then it's just a matter of doing all the color grading and everything else. And my plan is for it to be out this fall. I don't have a specific date yet. I would love to be able to do like rent a theater out, and
that would be wicked.
But I don't have the money for that.
You got a local theater there, don't you?
Oh, I do. I have a couple, but to rent out a theater, they're going to charge me a couple $1,000s.
I mean, hey, we could.
And I don't have that kind of money unless somebody wants to just donate it to me.
Drive up there, and we're going to go and sit down with them, and I'm going to talk them into giving it to us for free.
There we go.
I am a convincing person.
Well, absolutely. If you have the wherewithal to do that, but yeah, it'll eventually be out, I'm sure, on YouTube, or I may do an initial. I've tossed around the idea. Some documentary filmmakers do like an initial surge where they they put their show up on a site where you have to pay to watch it, like $1 or $2, and it goes to, then we could make it go to charity or something for the first several weeks. I don't know, a few options out there, but I'm just excited because the stories that I'm able to hear are incredibly inspiring. And just that trailer, I mean, I've seen that trailer probably 150 times, aside from all the time I edited, and it still gives me chills in parts of it. So
yeah, dude, the story is amazing. So, man, I really do appreciate it. I know we're going to have to literally jump off this one and go straight into yours. So guys, if you are interested, I'm going to get BP to send me the link for his episode. from his YouTube channel, and I'm going to share it out on the BWB page, and you're more than welcome to jump on there and join us on that one as well. And we'll be continuing this conversation. I don't know where he's going to shift the conversation to. I've been kind of directing the conversation, but that's because it's my show.
It might be about a lot of the same stuff. So
it might be, but hey, we're going to have fun either way. And BP gets to take over the helm on the next run. So
just go over to YouTube and search The Heart of a Villain. That's the channel.
Real easy to find. And we'll go from there. So guys, we're going to actually just wrap it up from here. Thank you, of course, like always, for tuning in. BP, you got anything final to say?
No, I'm just excited. I will say this. I am going to do this bad boy this weekend. Boom.
Yes.
I am officially going to be able to go down. I talked to the wife and she says, okay, fine. It's the last weekend before my son goes to college, but I said, hey, it's just a Saturday. So, and as a matter of fact, I think there's going to be 3 or 4 of us that are going to try and make the trip. So
Bearded Theater, gentlemen. BP will be down there. Go down there and give this man a hug. Unfortunately, with the new job and the time constraints, I'm not going to be able to make this trip. But BP is a good replacement for me. So get down there, give this man a hug, and shake his hand, and welcome him, down there, and show him some love that I know that everybody can. So with that, guys, like always, leave things better than how you found it. And always strive to leave a legacy. Have a great night, guys. Bye.